The wind howled across the arid plains of Khuzestan as if the desert itself whispered secrets from beneath the sand. Centuries of forgotten truths slept beneath those vast Iranian dunes, buried beneath the debris of empires long gone. No one could have guessed that a simple seismic survey ordered by a multinational oil conglomerate would become the spark that ignited a global firestorm. Dr. Cyrus Nadiri was not a man easily startled. A Harvard-educated archaeologist with a specialty in Achaemenid-era ruins, he had spent more of his life in the dust and ruins of ancient Persia than in any polished university lecture hall. But when the ground-penetrating radar his team used for environmental scanning lit up with symmetrical voids beneath an otherwise barren plateau, something deeper than professional curiosity gripped him. The shapes were unnatural, angular, measured, and vast, like underground chambers designed with purpose. "We need a permit," said Mahin, his assistant, pointing to the regional council's restrictions. "This is protected ground. If we start digging without clearance, they'll shut the whole operation down." "They'll shut it down when they know what we've found," he replied grimly. They kept their excavation small at first, enough to justify it under the pretense of exploratory conservation. But within weeks, the truth became undeniable. Beneath layers of sediment and crushed stone was not a mere tomb or palace ruin. It was an entire complex, deep and sprawling, forged of obsidian-colored stone that hadn't weathered with time. Their carbon dating yielded nothing, they couldn't age the material. It was as if time had no influence on it. The further they went, the more questions rose. Intricate inscriptions lined the walls in a mixture of Old Persian, Sumerian, and an unidentified script that none of their databases could decode. One corridor ended in a steel-like vault door, thousands of years old but without a hint of rust. That was when the Iranian Ministry of Cultural Heritage intervened. Or so they thought. One morning, just as dawn broke across the desert, black vehicles appeared on the horizon, unmarked and fast. Men in suits, speaking Farsi with foreign accents, disembarked and surrounded the site. A tall, fair-skinned man wearing desert tactical gear and Ray-Ban glasses introduced himself as Colonel Grant Weston, attached to an international archaeological cooperative, a lie so obvious even Mahin raised an eyebrow. "You've uncovered something dangerous," Weston said plainly. "Something the world is not ready to understand." Dr. Nadiri stood his ground. "This is Persian soil. Whatever is buried beneath us belongs to Iran and to history. That's what scares us the most," Weston replied. The Iranian government was informed, or perhaps they already knew. A deal was struck. Within days, Nadiri and Mahin were pulled from the dig. Military scientists took their place. The media never found out. But Nadiri had been clever. He had made digital copies of the inscriptions, recorded the chamber layout, and taken samples. He had risked everything. 2 years passed. Nadiri faded into academic obscurity. Mahin left Iran altogether, now living under a different name in Greece. But whispers of what was found in the desert had already begun to spread, not through tabloids or cable news, but in elite circles, geopolitical analysts, theologians, tech magnates, and royal families. They all spoke in hushed tones about the vaults. Then came the leak. A hacker collective calling itself Black Scrolls released classified footage online, a minute-long clip showing men in hazmat suits descending into the underground chambers. What shook the world wasn't the architecture or the ancient glyphs. It was the object. A golden sarcophagus unlike anything ever recorded, hovering inches above its pedestal without strings or wires. The air shimmered around it like water in a desert mirage. Its surface was etched with the same unknown language. More astonishing than its design was what lay inside, a perfectly preserved human body. Dark-skinned, braided hair, obsidian tattoos curling across the cheeks and down the neck. Alive or dead, no one could tell. The being didn't decay. It didn't breathe. But its eyes were open. The internet exploded. Conspiracy theorists called it a Nephilim. Scientists called it quantum stasis. Religious leaders denounced it as a hoax. Governments went silent. But for the elite, the message was clear: the balance of power had shifted forever. In New York, billionaire CEO Loretta Kane summoned her board behind closed doors. Her eyes were bloodshot. She had just come back from a 20-hour flight from Dubai, where she had met with military advisors and oil sheikhs. She tossed a printed photo on the table. "This is real," she said. "And the implications are bigger than any of you realize. Her company, Kane Global Solutions, had its fingers in AI research, weapons manufacturing, and biogenetics. The vaults of Persia had just made every one of those industries obsolete, because the being inside the sarcophagus was emitting signals. Not just radio frequencies, but something deeper. Every scientist who got near it reported dreams, visions of star maps, pyramids on other worlds, and languages they suddenly understood but had never heard before. Kane's chief science officer, Drive, Enrique Mendez, explained what others had feared. It's a beacon. This being isn't dead. It's waiting. And whatever created it, is listening. Suddenly, ancient Persia was no longer a dead empire. It was the keystone of a forgotten history. Thousands of years ago, when the world was tribal and fragmented, the Persian Empire claimed to be chosen by Ahura Mazda, the wise lord. Now that claim looked less like mythology and more like technology masked as religion. The underground vault proved something no one had expected, that a civilization before ours, far more advanced, had seeded knowledge into Persia. And they had left behind guardians. But not everyone was thrilled. In Tel Aviv, Mossad held emergency meetings. In Rome, the Vatican dispatched its Jesuit archivists to scour ancient codices for matching symbols. In Washington, a classified Senate hearing titled, Quantum Theology, took place behind locked doors. And in Mecca, Grand Muftis denounced the discovery as a blasphemous lie meant to undermine faith. Only one person remained calm, Zahra al-Khazemi, a historian living quietly in Shiraz. She had studied the Avesta, the sacred Zoroastrian texts, for most of her life. And when she saw the leaked footage, she didn't panic. She wept. My grandfather said this would happen, she whispered. They buried the truth because the truth was too powerful. Zahra was a descendant of the Magi, not metaphorically, but by bloodline. Her family had guarded oral traditions passed down since before Alexander the Great torched Persepolis. Her ancestors had once been custodians of what the modern world now called vaults, but they called them Dar-e-Hakikat, the gates of truth. Zahra traveled to Tehran under the radar, meeting secretly with Dr. Nadiri. They spoke in old dialects, exchanging phrases that hadn't been uttered publicly in centuries. They have only opened one vault, she said. There are 6 more. Nadiri's hands trembled. Where? She traced a map on the back of a napkin, an ancient star alignment used in Zoroastrian temples. The vaults weren't placed randomly. They followed a constellation. They form the shape of Mithra's blade, Zahra said. And the last one is not in Iran. Nadiri stared at her. Where is it? She answered with a single word. Antarctica. What had begun as an archaeological dig was now a planetary crisis. Superpowers scrambled to locate the remaining vaults. Secret wars broke out. Small, targeted operations masked as coups, drone strikes, or terror incidents. But they were all after one thing. Control of the vaults. Not for knowledge, not for history, but for the potential weapon hidden within. The being in the Persian vault was just one of many. They were not gods. They were envoys, and they were waking up.